So you guys know Terran Zoo, right? The leader of the Pandaren monk dude. Is it just me, or does that name sound a lot like a place you might go to see a siege tank in an approximation of its natural habitat? What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Sounds Good Makes Sense, a discussion show for the World of Warcraft player. My name is Devilorc, and today there's a lot going on, but I want to hone in on Mists of Pandaria Remix and just give my general thoughts on what's been going on both in my direct experiences with this game mode, as well as a lot of the discussions that I've been seeing surrounding it in the days since its release. Now, as far as my experience thus far, I've put a good several hours into it at this point. I've leveled up to somewhere around level 40, somewhere thereabouts. Gotten a decent way through the first two zones. I've almost basically entirely completed the Jade Forest and done at least the main story quests through the Valley of the Four Winds, and then a bunch of the side quests and such that I've come across along the way as well. And so I've had a bit of time with it at this point, at the very least at the lower levels. And I wanted to start off with some of my thoughts on what I've experienced so far, and then we'll get into some of the further discussions and what I'm seeing happening at Endgame a bit later. So the initial experience getting into MoP Remix is you actually start off on the Timeless Isle. You spend a little bit of time doing a couple of like basic get to understand the game mode sort of quests for the Infinite Dragonflight there on the Timeless Isle. At which point you are bestowed with a Cloak of Infinite Potential, which you will then quickly learn is a way that it will just constantly continue to gain stats and so on as you continue leveling and playing the game. And then you're eventually sent off to experience the story of Mists of Pandaria with some slight twists. Now, those twists are ultimately not really story related. You will encounter a few points throughout the zones where there is a member of the Infinite Dragonflight there, or like a little hub of the Infinite Dragonflight, and there's occasionally a couple things that you can do. But for the most part, the story of Mists of Pandaria is pretty much intact. You're basically going through the questing experience as it existed back then. The difference, however, is that as you are completing these quests or killing monsters and so on, you're earning a few things, and you're earning things a little bit differently than you would have back in the day. Rather than getting items specifically as a quest reward, you'll instead get these caches, which you can then open, and inside will occasionally be a piece of gear, but you'll also get things like gems. You'll get bronze in there, which is the currency that I'm going to come back to talking about bronze and how that currency works in a minute. And you also get these threads that then get applied to your cloak to increase your stats. And the cloak and the thread mechanic, I think I like that way. I like the way that they've put that together. It's very passive. It's literally just as you're doing things, you occasionally loot something and a thread like pops out of somewhere. It just appears next to you, attaches itself to you, and you get a little pop-up that says what stats you've gained as far as the bonuses on your cloak. You can also at any point look at a little debuff that you got up in the upper right that will indicate how much stats and how much of a benefit you're getting from your cloak. That feels pretty seamless and feels pretty smooth. It's just this sort of constant method of, as I'm continuing to play this and do whatever, I'm slowly getting stronger and stronger. The gems are much more of a mixed bag to me. And I would even say trending somewhat negative overall on my opinion of the gems. And the reason for that is that they're just kind of a whole bunch of extra upkeep. They're just kind of a bunch of extra steps that take me away from getting to play the game so that I can screw around with my inventory and screw around with removing things and adding things and so on. And chief among my list of complaints there are the pure stat gems. Like there's a bunch of gems that you get and you can slowly increase these and make them stronger and so on. But it basically boils down to you have some gems that just basically add like some crit or some haste or whatever. And the amount that they add scales somewhat with the item level of the gear that you're putting it into, or maybe it's to your player level. I'm not sure which of those two it actually is. I believe it's the item level of the gear that you're slotting it into. And you can also get like the basically basic level gems, and you merge them together into better gems, and you merge those together into even better gems, and so on and so forth. It's just a lot of clicking for what is ultimately just some stats. And the game already, in this game mode, already has a system with the cloak by which you're just constantly increasing your stats. So the gem system that also increases your stats on top of that feels honestly mostly unnecessary and very much a lot of just extra clicking and extra like busy work just to get yourself a very boring passive benefit of a bit more crit or whatever. There are other gems that add like passive abilities and passive benefits. Like, for example, you hit something and then it catches on fire and that fire can spread to other things and so on. There's a bunch of gems that give these passive benefits. And those are a bit more interesting. Those ones I do enjoy. They lead a little bit more into this feeling of like starting to figure out which passive benefits fit in best with your class or your build and which ones play off against each other better and so on, to the point where you can start to do some interesting things with those. But really, the biggest problem that I have with the gem system is just the amount of upkeep and the amount of time that it takes for me to sit there and screw around with. You got to remove these from the existing piece of gear, equip the new piece of gear, then slot the gem back into the new piece of gear. To the extent that without an add-on, like literally one of the first things as I was streaming this, one of the first things anyone said to me was, make sure you download this, I believe it's a Domination Socket Helper add-on. Make sure you download this add-on because it's going to make this so much nicer for you. And I did, and it did. But what's extra interesting on top of that is another add-on that I discovered a little bit later on. And I've seen a few other creators already talking about this add-on. It's called Narcissus. And for the most part, Narcissus is an add-on that it does all sorts of different things. Like it gives you this really cool looking character sheet that's almost like very, I don't know, like Destiny 2 style character sheet looking thing. It has this really involved and in-depth like screenshot mode where you can like pose different characters and have like a family portrait of you and Khadgar and Garrosh Hellscream if you wanted to for whatever reason. Like it has a bunch of different things that it does. So I was surprised to learn that this add-on that does all of these very not gameplay related directly things, it's very much a cosmetic add-on for the majority of what else it does, also has this function which allows you to basically treat all of the gems as though they were a talent tree and just like a character sheet based thing instead. It's a little bit easier to describe by looking at it instead of me just trying to say it. So for purposes of the video, I'm just going to put some B-roll here that shows a little bit of what I'm doing with this system. But it basically turns all of these different abilities and gems and stats that you get into something that you unlock, and then it handles all of the inventory nonsense for you. And it wasn't until I was messing around with that add-on that it really clicked for me why I disliked the gems so much. And it really just boiled down to all of the clicking and all of the like screwing around with your inventory. And again, the like remove piece of gear, replace with other piece of gear, take gem out of old piece of gear, put gem into new piece of gear, try to remember which gem, because I'm dumb, try to remember which gem I took out and which gem I'm putting in. There's all of these like several steps every time you get a new piece of gear, which by the way, especially when you first start leveling, you're getting a new piece of gear probably every 10 to 15 minutes. It's very, very constant that this is happening. So there's all of this clicking that's going on constantly and all this screwing around with your inventory that just, it takes away from the experience of getting to just go and do the Pandaria questline and relive that whole experience. And I contrast this with Season of Discovery, because Season of Discovery has a very similar system through the runes, right? Where you unlock these runes and then you attach those to pieces of gear. The way that I contrast that and compare that and why I like SOD's implementation versus the Mists of Pandaria remix implementation, there's a couple reasons. One is, like I was saying before, a lot of the benefits that you're getting from these gems are just super boring. Like it's not interesting to me in the slightest to have to click 12 times to be able to get myself an extra 0.3% crit or whatever. Like that's just not, I don't care that much. There's genuinely points where I've been like, yeah, I could probably pull out all the gems out of my gear, combine all of them together so that they're better and get myself a bit more stats. But that's a lot of clicking and I don't care enough because I'm like, it's just questing. I'm not having that much difficulty killing things. So why would I do that? And especially because this is happening so regularly. Like I said, when you're going through these quests, you're probably getting a new piece of gear, all of which have these gem slots on them, by the way, aside from like the cloak, but the cloak is upgrading itself constantly. Again, the cloak I like, cloak is good. The pieces of gear that have these gem slots on them, you're probably getting a new one every like 10 to 15 minutes. And every like just often enough, the stats on the new one is something that you like actually look at and you say, okay, yeah, it's probably worth me replacing this, changing out my old one. But like that's a good another minute or so of clicking, that literally just clicking and screwing around with your inventory to be able to put this piece of gear on. It just feels like busy work that isn't like, it's not fun extra busy work because I'm not getting a cool benefit out of it, especially when it's just like some crit or some haste or whatever that I'm getting as a result. It just feels, it feels like a lot of extra busy work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And while obviously the passive abilities and even the active abilities are a lot more interesting, like it actually is, there's a significantly notable, actually like tangible value to slotting in these more passive abilities and these actual raw benefits. The difference between that and SOD, and I think why I'm generally less worried about it in Mists of Pandaria Remake compared to SOD, is remember that Season of Discovery exists inside Classic. And Classic is at a time where you just really don't have class mechanics very much. They're like original Classic era or the original vanilla game and so on. Your rotation involved a lot of sitting around and doing nothing. And so when all of these abilities and passives and stuff are added to Season of Discovery, it feels like fleshing out the class and making it feel like a more complete thing. That's not really the case for me in Mists of Pandaria Remix, because the classes, like they're Dragonflight classes, they're already a complete thing. And if anything, one of the big complaints I've heard from people about Dragonflight, and that I've felt myself playing a Windwalker Monk through the beginning of Dragonflight, is that the classes are actually a bit bloated. Like there's actually a little bit too much going on with class design in Dragonflight. So this is just adding on top of that and giving me even more things to think about on top of like, okay, here's what my talents are doing, here's what I'm doing, and all this other stuff. And it just kind of, for me, ends up feeling like a whole lot of extra work to do that just is, it's slowing me down from actually just getting to play the video game. In summary, it kind of feels like a lot of people have drawn that comparison, right? Of saying, oh, Mists of Pandaria Remix, it's like having the SOD runes, but in a Dragonflight sense, and you get new abilities and so on. And that, I understand that comparison, but to me, that's getting the wrong takeaway from why Season of Discovery runes are interesting. Like the people playing Season of Discovery and being like, oh man, yeah, I love having these runes. They love having the abilities that come with the runes because classic class design is very simplistic. There isn't much going on. So the fact that I can add like Chimera Shot and Trap Launcher and so on to my Marksmanship Hunter in Season of Discovery makes that class feel much better and more complete to play. These are already complete classes in Dragonflight. This is just extra stuff that's layering on top of that. And while, yes, I would assume for someone who has played the crap out of Dragonflight, this is like, okay, cool, this is an extra little flavor because I'm already super familiar with everything else. I can only speak from my own personal perspective. And for me, it wasn't as interesting to me. It felt like, okay, especially because I've been playing a Demonology Warlock in Mists of Pandaria Remix, which is not a spec I've played since Legion, maybe? Might even be as far back as Warlords of Draenor was the last time that I played Demonology on my Warlock. So this is something that I'm looking at and being like, okay, I'm kind of relearning how this class works. And that feels intended. It feels like this is the sort of mode where you should be playing a new class because you're having to level a whole new character. So the fact that I'm leveling a whole new character, I'm learning about how this character works, I'm trying to understand everything that's going on with that, and then I also have this extra layer of these other passives that are tying into it, feels like a bit much to me. It feels a little bit overwhelming. Personally, I think they could have gotten the same feeling across with a fifth of the number of gem slots and just get rid of the boring stat gems entirely. Personally, for me, that would have felt a little bit better. Or, alternative suggestion, don't do all this gem nonsense with it. Like, it's entirely possible that they had to go the gem route because that was just the easiest way for them to, like, mechanically and as far as logistics go with the tech they had available. It's entirely possible that they had to do it that way. But the fact that someone was able to make an add-on that turns it into more of a talent tree slash like character build sort of feeling, instead of monkeying around with your gear constantly and removing gems and adding gems and combining gems and all that. The fact that someone was able to make an add-on that does all of this and looks great, like visually looks fantastic. And this add-on came out like 2 or 3 days after Mists of Pandaria Remix did. And I really doubt they got much time to do any experimentation with it on the PTR because the PTR was only up for like 2 days, and we're going to come back to that. This makes me think that maybe there was probably some way that Blizzard could have done something similar to make this whole thing less of a pain and let me spend more time actually just playing the game mode. But anyway, that's enough ranting about the gems. Personally, they're kind of a miss for me, but they don't like break the game mode for me or anything. They're a little frustrating to deal with, but I can handle it, right? It's a little bit of clicking. It's fine. It's whatever. Once you're actually getting into the game and you're going through the most of the game mode up until max level is pretty much just go and do the Pandaria quest, like I said. And the reason to do all this, aside from, just reliving the story of Mists of Pandaria, is to earn this currency called bronze. And bronze is basically the thing that drives everything in this entire game mode. Bronze is pretty much the whole point of anything that you're doing. The ultimate goal is earn bronze so that you can then buy these rewards, these cosmetic rewards that you can get. Now, I should note at this point that you can also use bronze to upgrade your gear, and I assume that by the time you reach max level, you probably want to be doing that a little bit just to advance your character along a little bit further, and that feels really bad. Like, there are a ton of cosmetic unlocks that you can get throughout this event, and it's a limited time event. It feels really bad as a player, even if, in the back of my mind, I know, okay, I'm going to spend this bronze to upgrade my gear so that I can kill things faster and thus earn bronze faster. It feels really bad to be spending that currency that I need to earn these cosmetic rewards on something that is not those cosmetic rewards. I strongly feel like either that item upgrade system just shouldn't exist in the first place to drop more gear. You have the option of doing that. Or tie more things into the cloak, give us more ways to upgrade the cloak and don't worry about the whole gear system in the first place. Or make all of the gear work like the cloak. I can think of like 5 or 6 different ways this thing could have been implemented that would not have required you to spend bronze on gear upgrades. And all of those would be preferable to having to make the choice between, do I purchase the cosmetic item, which is the whole reason I'm here in the first place, or do I upgrade my gear and hope that doing so is going to make it so I can earn bronze faster so that I can then buy more of the cosmetic upgrades. And one thing that's kind of, this is going to sound weird, bear with me here, but one thing that's kind of making that situation even worse is that, honestly, there are way too many rewards that you can buy with that bronze in this mode. Like literally, there's this spreadsheet that I'm sure anyone who's been really paying attention to MoP Remix has seen at this point. This spreadsheet moving around that has just a ton of things to check off. And each one of those things costs like anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 bronze. And in total, with all those things costing between 2,000 and 5,000 bronze, in total, you need like 1.6 million bronze to actually have unlocked everything. Now, obviously, it seems like the intention, and I'm sure people are already being like, well, you don't have to get everything. Yes, it seems like the intention is that you're not really supposed to get everything. You're supposed to, at least in Blizzard's mind, it seems like the case is that you're supposed to sit down and go, these are the handful of things that I want, and I'll just get those, and then I'm done, right? I get a couple of things, get the couple of things that I want the most, and then I'm done. That kind of seems like what their intention is here. But realistically, we have, what, 20 years now of World of Warcraft history that proves World of Warcraft players don't really think that way. A lot of WoW players, especially when you give them a limited time mode, a lot of WoW players look at a list of things they can earn, and that's a checklist. That is something that they look at and say, these are the things that I should do to quote unquote complete this event. That's what we have as WoW players almost been trained to do over the past 20 years of playing World of Warcraft. And it just kind of sucks, especially for a limited time mode that's only, yes, it's around for like 3 months, but it's still a limited time mode. So it's something that you look at and you say, okay, I want to complete all of this. It's not something that I can just do sometimes, then come back to later. It's something that if I want any of this stuff, I need to get it now, or else who knows when I'll have an opportunity to get this again. A lot of these rewards are pretty much unique to the Mists of Pandaria Remix event. So if there's stuff in there that you want, you've got about 3 months to get it. You need to be doing that now. And yes, 3 months, again, that's quite some time, but it still creates this mindset of here is a checklist of things that if I want to quote unquote complete this event, if I want to have done this, that's the goal. That getting all of this stuff is the goal at that point. That's just the mental expectation that it puts on the player. And I know people are probably hearing this and being like, well, you don't necessarily want everything, right? You don't necessarily look at this and be like, okay, there's a list of stuff and I need to get the paladin set, even though I don't play a paladin. And while yes, that's technically true in the current state of things. Like right now, I'm not playing a paladin, but I might play a paladin in the future. And part of me is then looking at this and being like, okay, if I decide to play a paladin in the future, am I going to be mad at myself for not earning that when I had the opportunity? And that is pretty much directly my experience looking at Mists of Pandaria Remix right now. I'm someone where I look at this list of rewards and there isn't anything that I desperately want right now. Like even my monk, I have not changed my monk's transmog since the original release of Mists of Pandaria. That character has looked the same. Okay, I race changed at one point from Blood Elf to Undead. But aside from that, that character has looked the same since the original Mists of Pandaria. I got a few items from the Throne of Thunder raid, and I was like, okay, this is what I want my monk to look like. And I've literally not changed his transmog ever since. So for me, I look at the list of rewards that are available, and I don't think to myself immediately like, oh yeah, I want that one and that one and that one and that one. There isn't anything I look at that I'm like, yes, this is what I want to get that reward right now. That is a direct and immediate thing that I want to get. So instead, I look at the list of rewards and I start thinking about it of, okay, well, which of these might I eventually want someday? Which of these are things that I might eventually like decide I want to change up the way a different character looks, or maybe I start playing a different character entirely, or I change classes, or any of these things can occur. At which point I'm like, okay, maybe there will be some point in the future while I will be upset at myself for not having unlocked this stuff all the way back when I had the opportunity to do so. And that might sound crazy and that might sound self-inflicted, but it's a video game and its point is to be entertaining. So if it puts me in a position like that, that sucks. That's not a great gameplay experience for someone like me who's looking at this stuff and having that result. And it should be noted as well that this was my exact experience with Plunderstorm also. Plunderstorm I was playing, like I genuinely enjoyed the Plunderstorm game mode, so I played it well after I unlocked everything. But Plunderstorm, the Plunderstorm unlocks, the cosmetics that I've gotten from that, I haven't used any of them at all yet. Like even when I have been playing like in the War Within Alpha more recently, and I've started to dip my toes back into Dragonflight to understand that a little bit more. And even now in Mists of Pandaria Remix, I'm not using any of the Plunderstorm unlocks. They weren't things that I was like, yes, I want to get that and use that right away. They were things that I got because I thought to myself, those look cool. I might eventually want to use them. And I'm sure there were a ton of people who were pushing their way through Plunderstorm who didn't like the game mode, but again, felt like, okay, this is a limited time event. This is something that if I, at some point in the future, want to look like I want to look like a pirate, basically. If I, at some point in the future, want any of these cosmetic appearances, I need to get them now. I have a limited amount of time that I'm able to do that in, and I need to get them now. The big difference is that Plunderstorm's reward structure was a straight track. You spent X amount of time, and thus you received the thing. And that was pretty much it. The amount of time that it's going to take to get quote unquote everything in Mists of Pandaria Remix is already A, absurd, and B, it's just a ton of grinding, which is a great segue for me to start talking about the level 70 gameplay, at least what I've seen of it from watching a couple streams, a couple other videos and so on, and just people talking to me about their experiences at level 70. It honestly sounds like level 70 gameplay in MoP Remix is a huge miss all around. Like the whole point is bronze, and bronze drops from everything. So it doesn't really matter if you're clearing raids, because the drops off the bosses you kind of don't care about. As long as you're getting bronze, you kind of don't care. Doesn't really matter if you're doing dungeons. Doesn't really matter if you're doing, I don't even know if PvP exists in MoP Remix, but that doesn't matter either. Like none of that matters. All that matters is get as much bronze as you possibly can, which means that the gameplay at max level basically becomes find a good spot to farm until you can't stand it anymore, or you get enough like upgrades to your cloak and whatever else to be able to move to a better farm spot and then farm some more, which is a point that is made a bit worse by the inevitable discussion that's been going on lately about the whole frog thing. Real short explanation of what that is if you're unfamiliar. There was a couple of places found on the Timeless Isle where these frogs would get what was called a hyper spawn, basically meaning as soon as one died, another one spawned. And so they were just spawning constantly. So you could get a few people together and just beat the crap out of frogs for an infinite amount of time, and thus earn an infinite amount of, you were earning a lot of bronze, but perhaps more importantly, you were getting a ton of threads for your cloak. So some people were able to go to this spot on the Timeless Isle, beat the crap out of some frogs for several hours, like 8+ hours. They would have spent all this time beating up all these frogs, getting all of these threads for their cloak, and now their characters are supremely powerful. Now that is almost certainly not what Blizzard envisioned as the gameplay for Mists of Pandaria Remix. So that ended up getting nerfed, and the hyper spawns are gone now. You can no longer go to the Timeless Isle and farm frogs endlessly. But that's now created this weird situation where there's people who were able to do that, and they now have these supremely powerful characters that can just go solo raids if they want to. And anyone else who now gets to level 70 no longer has that option. Now, one thing I want to be super clear about here, because a lot of people have been misinterpreting what the issue is with that. I don't care about catching up. I'm not in, there's no up to catch to at this point, really. Like it's not competitive. I'm not like in a hurry to get to the same spot that someone else was because I'm quote unquote behind. I don't care that I'm behind. I don't care that I am not currently level 70 and am not currently a super powered hard, like just beating everything up character. I don't care that I am not that person yet. The problem is the option to become that person is now pretty much gone, or at the very least made significantly more difficult and time consuming, especially when you add on the extra like wrench in the gears or whatever that phrase is in this whole situation, which is that the level 70 scaling, at least from everything that I've been told, I gather they've done some tweaks at this point, but the level 70 scaling has been very, very off in Mists of Pandaria Remix. There have been a lot of people who were saying things like, yeah, I was level 69 and unstoppable. I hit level 70 and suddenly was dying to outdoor quest mobs. Now, it is entirely possible that that's intentional, right? Like that might be Blizzard's way of just giving a soft, like, hey, congratulations, you reached level 70, start a new character. But I don't think starting a new character constantly is like that feels weird, especially with the amount of time investment you put into your MoP Remix character. and all of the threads that are on your cloak at that point. Like that, I don't know, that feels a little bit weird. And it's just like, I don't know, just let people, like, I don't see a reason for the level 70 gameplay to get so much more difficult on a dime like that. That feels, honestly, that feels like a bug. And incidentally, the fact that that was the case was what led so many people to do the frog thing in the first place. They were like, okay, we are way underpowered for anything at level 70. Clearly what we need to do is buff up our cloaks as much as we possibly can. Here's a spot with these hyper spawns. Let's go farm the crap out of that until our cloaks are buffed up enough that we can actually go have some fun playing the video game again. Without the ability to get that in some capacity, it doesn't have to be frogs, but without the ability for you to level up your cloak in some way once you're level 70, that isn't frustrating because you're getting your face beat in constantly. That just kind of leaves you with, okay, I hit level 70 and now this is no longer any fun. And that's no good. Now, obviously, like I said, I am not to that level yet. I have not spent that much time in Mists of Pandaria Remix because frankly, the rest of the event for me is kind of flat and I haven't really been enjoying it enough. And that's not like, it's fine for me to not enjoy things. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. It's fine that I'm not the target audience for this, but I can still look at it holistically and philosophically from a design perspective and look at this and say, okay, yeah, that still feels like kind of a miss. And I can't help but look at this situation and then look to the like literal 48 hours of PTR testing they did, which was also at an accelerated rate for everything, by the way. I can't help but look at that shortened period of PTR testing and then also look back to the surprise release of Plunderstorm and think to myself, yeah, it's cool that Blizzard is coming up with these ideas. It's cool that Blizzard is trying to release things without them all being spoiled first on the PTR. But it's hard to say that it's actually resulting in an overall better experience. Like, yes, I'm sure there are players who, if MoP Remix had been put at its normal rate of speed, which, by the way, don't test things at an accelerated rate of speed. All you're going to get at that point is feedback from people on that like the thing at the accelerated rate of speed. And then you take that away and then they inherently like it less. Like, that's just, don't do that. That's in my mind, that's a mistake. But secondarily, even if people were to, like, say, take a week, leave it up for a week or something like that, leave it up for 2 weeks. Even if people were to really go ham on it during those 2 weeks and then be burnt out and not want to do it once it comes out again later. First of all, that's kind of their choice. Let people be adults. Like, if they're going to burn themselves out on a not real version of this mode before it actually comes out, okay, that's their choice, I guess. Secondly, I'm fairly confident there would actually be very few people who would do that. I'm pretty confident that the vast majority of people would start playing it, go, okay, yeah, I understand what this is. And then once it releases, that's when they actually go ham on it because they want to get all those rewards and they've figured out some strategy for how they want to do it during the PTR cycle. But most importantly, for everyone who didn't participate on the PTR, for everyone who didn't really spend a whole bunch of time testing, it is going to result in a better experience. Blizzard is very much reliant. I know people say otherwise all the time, but Blizzard is very much reliant on player feedback. They are a company that, more than almost any other company that comes to mind for me, at least major like AAA companies, obviously lots of indie developers do this much better than any AAA company does at this point in time. But of the AAA companies, Blizzard is genuinely very receptive to feedback. They genuinely look and take player feedback much better than so many other companies out there do. And it's become ingrained clearly in the way that they develop things. The way that they actually create the content is very stringent on player feedback. So when you remove that player feedback from the normal design process for a company like Blizzard, the result is they're just literally missing part of their design process. They're literally just missing a step along the way. And as cool as it would be, and as much as I would love it if it actually ever happened, for Blizzard to have something that they keep as an absolute secret and then they drop it on us and it's just amazing and everyone loves it and it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I'm so glad that it was a surprise. I'm so glad that blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. I am willing to give up that dream personally. I am willing to give up that dream of some amazing surprise release that everyone is shocked by and it really just throws everyone for a loop, in favor of making sure that what does get released is fun to play. Now, obviously, I'm kind of talking down on the event a little bit right now. It's just definitely not for me. It's not something that I'm enjoying, but I do want to close out this video by saying that's actually fine. Like, I'm literally just listing off the reasons that I don't like it. If you like it, great. I'm actually super happy. Like, I know there are some people, I've watched some videos from other content creators too, who are talking about this event and they're like, yeah, this stuff was kind of weird, but I actually really love this and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying it. And that's That's great. In fact, actually, that's a very, very good thing. And I'm actually glad that I kind of don't feel Mists of Pandaria remakes that much. Like literally like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was talking about how I felt like there was too much World of Warcraft going on and how I wasn't able to keep up with all of it. So for me, looking at this and being like, oh yeah, MoP remix, I think I'll pass on that. To me, that's a relief. That's me going, great. Now I might actually get to play some Cataclysm Classic. I might actually get to spend some more time in the War Within Alpha. This has opened up part of my World of Warcraft schedule to other World of Warcraft. That's completely fine. I'm not going to complain about that in the slightest. And the other aspect of it is if you as a player or me as a player want there to be things that cater to my specific interests, like if I want there to be a mode that comes out that's just nothing but it's just Mythic Plus all the time, and you probably just say, well, that's just basically World of Warcraft, and you're probably not wrong. But for me, I love dungeons. I love doing dungeons, and 5-player dungeons, up to 10-player dungeons are my favorite aspect of World of Warcraft. That's what I enjoy doing the most in the game. So if they came out with some mode that catered directly to just all dungeons all day, every day, and slimmed it down and made it a really, really fun, cohesive experience, I would be all about that event, and I would absolutely love that. But I know a lot of people would probably not be as interested in it. There's a lot of people who would be less keen on essentially Mythic Plus the game. They would be less keen on that as a game mode. So in order for the way that I would like things to go to ever exist, in order for there to be the notion of a type of gameplay that caters to a specific audience, you have to accept that sometimes the specific audience being catered to is not yourself. And with that in mind, it's super encouraging to me actually to see Blizzard starting to lean more in the direction of creating these little one-off events or creating these little experiences that are catered specifically to a certain type of player and kind of look at players that aren't into that and say, yeah, maybe this isn't for you. I think they have a lot of work to do in figuring out how to make a reward structure for these events that doesn't then encourage people who don't want to do that gameplay to then hate themselves doing it and feel like they're being dragged into it because it's like, well, I really want this thing. In order to do this thing, I have to do this thing I don't want to do. Like that's an unenjoyable experience for anyone. That's not something that sucks a little bit. I think Blizzard still has some stuff to figure out in terms of how to structure the rewards in this way, but I do love that they're experimenting a lot more, and I do love that they're more willing to look at something and say, yeah, not everyone is going to do this, and that's okay. We were just talking about Torghast in Search of Answers a couple days ago. Someone asked about the idea of Torghast coming back, and one of the things I mentioned then was how the reward structure was kind of what made Torghast awful, because what happened was they added things into Torghast to make it something that everyone wanted to do. And then once it was something that everyone wanted to do, they had to make it tolerable for the people that didn't enjoy that gameplay. If they just let things like that exist in a way where, yes, some people are going to really love this and some people are really not, and just say, okay, then just make it for the people that really love it and the people that it's not for can go do something else. I think that's good. I think that's ultimately going to be healthy for games like World of Warcraft and for teams like Blizzard to be able to do that stuff and just say, okay, we're not making this for you. We'll make something else for you some other point. Don't worry. Like, it's not abandoning that section of the player base. It's just literally saying there isn't any reason for you to do this and it's not fun for you. So don't. Caveat again that obviously, especially if there are rewards from the MoP remix, if the gameplay isn't for you, but there are rewards from the MoP remix that you really want to get, you still do kind of feel dragged into doing it because that carrot is enough that you're going to follow the stick. That's a problem that it's a tough one to solve, but that's a problem that Blizzard's going to have to keep grappling with and try to figure out a way to make it more tolerable. Personally, honestly, what I would like to see is have these idea of event rewards and have them be a recurring thing that can be earned through different methods, so that if you like this event comes out and you're like, yeah, I'd really love these rewards that is available for this event, but I don't want to do that gameplay to earn them. Say, okay, cool. Those rewards will be back at a future point with a different event. Maybe you'll like that event more, and just reuse those rewards in that sense. Make it something new that you can earn. I don't know that that's the perfect solution for it, but that's an idea at the very least. I think there's things to explore about ways to try to achieve that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I feel like I've been extra rambly today and I've kind of been all over the place, but hopefully this at least comes across as not as me trashing the MoP Remix event itself, because I think I know there are definitely players that are loving MoP Remix and are really enjoying it. I'm genuinely happy for those players. I'm glad that there is a thing that exists that they are enjoying and that they're having a good time with. It's not really for me. So Like, this is my show. This is where I give my thoughts. So obviously my thoughts are going to be the ones that I have now given. But I think it's fine that it's not for me. And honestly, that's probably a good place to end it. So thank you all so much for watching. As usual, if you have not yet, please do go and check out my Patreon. It's at devilore.com, patreon.com/devilore. Apparently I'm just all over the place today. I will say there are some exciting things that will be coming to devilore.com very soon, but that's just a bit of a tease for the future. We got some stuff in the works going on over there, but patreon.com/devilore, you can head over there and take a look at all the different rewards that are available. We are coming up to, I think, next week. Yes, next week is the point in which I will have my monthly sort of content planning video. And I've got a couple of things that I am planning to announce in that video that should be pretty exciting for people. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's a video that's exclusive to Patreon where I talk about my plans for the upcoming month. And that's kind of where I give the first break of exciting new things, or at the very least, the first reveal. That was all over the place. At the very least, the first reveal of some new stuff that's going to be coming along. So keep an eye out on that. Again, that's patreon.com/devilore. You can check that out. It's also, you can also get audio only versions of all of these if that's something you're interested in. That's something people have always asked me for, even back in the Weekly Marmot days, asked me for audio only versions of all of the shows that I do. And those are a perk that is available through Patreon that you can then feed into your RSS readers, or even get them through Spotify at that point. So go and check that out. Lots of streaming stuff that's coming along still. Please do check me out over on twitch.tv/devilore. Some people have noticed that I haven't been streaming to YouTube so much this week. I'm just kind of doing some experiments. I will probably start streaming to YouTube again in the very near future, just experimenting with some things. Don't worry about that too much. It's not an indication of long-term changes or whatever. Or, I mean, honestly, like, let me know in the comments below. If you're like, yeah, I love watching your YouTube comment, but it's YouTube content, but it's annoying that I get these notifications for your live streams that I don't care about. I would genuinely love to know that, because I'm still trying to kind of figure out the YouTube live ecosystem as much as I can and how that works. I don't know. Maybe I need to make a second channel or something. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you all so much once again for watching, and I'll see you later.